with the long-awaited and most fan-favorite characters of the Hazbin Hotel universe, Baxter and St. Peter! Kidding! But for real, I do think it's time to redesign them. Well, mostly St. Peter, who, and I know y'all don't like when I say this, but I hate his design, mainly due to the fact that St. Peter is a real person, rest in peace, and was not a blonde, blue-eyed twink of a man, and after all of Vivzy Pop's not wanting to tie real-world events and often people, so it's just crazy to see St. Peter, and as someone who grew up with his candle around my grandparents' house, and was often spoken about as well, considering that in his death he is depicted as being the gatekeeper, so it's weird to see what Spindlehorse did with him. Granted, they did make him the gatekeeper, but hands down, it's giving Fate Grand Order, where they turned Leonardo da Vinci into a big boobed anime girl. Just feels wrong. Cause like, if you didn't know the design was the St. Peter, it'd be fine. Like, granted the suit skirt combo was a choice, but still wouldn't have had an issue. But now knowing, I'm like, in what way is this man one of Jesus's 12 apostates who died at 68 years old and is considered the first pope of Rome? How? Like, that man right there, that's just some white guy. And not only does his design show no signs of age or the person they share the same name with, or nose for that matter, his outfit is probably my least favorite design ever, minus the speaker. And while I like that his colors are yellow and blue, as St. Peter is depicted wearing those colors in his paintings, the outfit itself is just boring, like the basic blue vest with another bow tie. But I will say I do like that the bell sleeves has golden hemlines, which no other heavenly character has that in their design, but the skirt is just, I don't know. I do think the cross design is interesting, but due to the skirt being a completely different color from his whole outfit, it just ends up making it look really disconnected, almost like his torso was just placed on top of a different character. And the same goes for his colors in general, as he has 8 different colors. That is crazy for basically a background character. Also, while the real St. Peter died in his late 60s, I am slightly okay with a younger depiction, since a lot of people assume when you die and go to heaven, you revert back to your mid to late 20s. Not sure if that's even mentioned biblically, but it is a nice thought. However, though, to make him and kind of his personality a borderline older teen feels off-putting, to say the least. Also, I just have to say it, his hair kind of bugs me in the similar sense that Charlie's bangs do when she turns to the side. Like, there's not a lot of construction going on with these hairstyles. Anyway, on to the St. Peter's redesign. Okay, since St. Peter is a real person, I decided to, draw the actual guy, because again, that's not St. Peter. I get trying to make a whole new guy to avoid actually including the real person, but with him having the same name and job as the actual guy, it just doesn't work and feels kind of rude in a way. But yeah, so for St. Peter's redesign, I aged him up. He's technically now in his 50s, as I really didn't want to make him any younger since there's already so many really young characters in heaven. And plus, I really wanted to give him his beard back because there is such a lacking of facial hair within this show. I also made his hair to be, in a sense, more watery with like little bits floating off, since he technically was once a fisherman. Also, his original name was Simon till Jesus renamed him Peter, which means rock. Stick with me here, but with his name now being Peter and now meaning rock and in charge of like the church in a sense, he was now considered the foundation of the church. He also witnessed the walking on water moment, so water really seems to be a theme for him. There's a few other things that are themed with him as well, but like the whole rooster thing never made sense to me. Anyway, that is why I went so heavy with the water theming, aka his outfit, as I completely scrapped the vest and skirt combo and went with a more traditional loose robes with a side sash and 2 little extra side sashes, but made it more fancy by adding golden wave lines to the hem of his sleeves and bottom robe, and his halo collar as well. I also gave him a front piece with a cross-like design, but at the end of it, it starts to shape into the head of a spear, again to hint to his past. As for accessories, I gave him a simple golden keychain belt with keys on it. Even though he may open the front doors, I do like to think St. Peter has keys to a lot more holy places in heaven and has now become the only one trusted enough to have them. But he does also have the big door key design similar to the ones made in his time. His last accessory are little golden fish pins that lay on his ears, mainly to make his hair look more like water, as it would look like the fish are swimming in it, but also because I thought they looked cute. As for his halo, I did remake it to look similar to the glowing eye designs on top of the door in the show to show how connected he is to his post. Oh, also before I keep going, feature-wise, I actually did give St. Peter a nose and ears because this whole, like, thing that's going on, like, it's so uncanny and I really don't like it because it's like, we know St. Peter was a person, so to see him without a nose and ears is just crazy because when you look at Adam and Abel, they look like regular schmegular people, so it's like, why? There you go, that is why. I also based all of his features on the actual man, so there you go. But now color. So while I do like Peter's color palette in the show, as they did use yellow and blue, which are St. Peter's usual colors, and technically I did kind of use blue and yellow, but in order to separate my redesign of Abel's colors from St. Peter's, I decided to go heavier with the blues and like more watercolors and using gold as my highlight color. I also decided to use more muted / darker colors, as I can imagine the brightness of heaven can often be a lot on first look for some people, so I really wanted St. Peter to feel otherworldly in the way his outfit looked, but somehow feels normal due to the colors being so muted, which is why his robes are more dark blue with blue-green hems, and also to kind of give off deep sea vibes. However, though, his side sash is a light sea foam, and the double sashes are a darker version of that. And the middle piece are those same colors, but ombre. His hair is also those same colors, mainly so your eyes are more focused on his face, but also to give the illusion of his whole design giving off the entire sea, aka from the deep depths of the sea to the bright top and the crashing foam. Hopefully you can see it. Oh, and his wings are also these colors, just so there's no overlapping. And that is about it for St. Peter. The only real thing I would do with his character is make him less of a one-track character / background character and make him more of the babysitter / actual father figure for Emily and Abel, as we do see he is part of their group and it's probably like age-wise, but I don't know. I think there should be someone a little bit older looking after them. Plus, he even sits next to Abel during the meeting, and their seats are much closer to Sarah and off of the balcony. So there must be some importance for this specific St. Peter. But the way I would have done it with this version is if there had been more focus on Abel's whole taking over his dad's position and overall death, I'd have him go to St. Peter to ask for advice since he's much older and was also once human and had to make big decisions. So I would like that dynamic. Plus, we know Adam didn't care for Abel all that much. We don't really know the full dynamic of how they were in front of each other. So I like to think that like when Abel and Adam were having like issues, Abel would run off to St. Peter and they would chat and like, you know, I like to think a lot of like Abel's real personality comes from St. Peter. But anyway, on to Baxter. Anyway, moving on to Baxter, who I genuinely have zero issues with, as he's the first mainish character design to have almost zero red on him, though his Zoophobia design actually has zero red on him, so. But during the Zoophobia days, his design was way too similar to Alistair's and a few other characters who were like a cluster of Alistair's in different colors. However, though, even back then, he was still a mad scientist, but was dressed in a full suit and a hat, so his little redesign Viv gave him was a nice change. And he technically hasn't changed all that much since the pilot, other than downgrading the amount of dots and his little hat being taken off, which, oh, thank God. Like, don't get me wrong, I like his original pre-pilot hat, but that new tiny pilot hat, No. Also, fun little tidbit, Baxter was actually made before Sir Pentious, but Viv had more fun with Sir Pentious and so did the fans, which is why he was more included in season 1, as technically he wasn't supposed to come back, and Baxter was probably going to take over. And in an interview, Viv even says that she didn't know what to do with him, as Sir P had now become the silly scientist, and she also mentions she wishes season 2 was longer, so that Baxter could have been set up to be the red herring, which, like, girl, you know damn well if the show was longer, that would not have happened till the episode before it's revealed it was Angel. But anyway, but even with the little we got of Baxter, I did enjoy him. Even his ties to Sir Pentious was fun, and it was interesting to see how their world functions outside of Charlie and the V's and Heaven. And as for his design or outfit, I genuinely like it, as it's relatively simple and tells you who he is pretty much up front, mad scientist, as that coat is a staple for the mad scientist look. However, back before Viv decided not to include real story events, Baxter's death was originally tied to the Titanic, and kinda still is, but in a more fictional version, so that would still put his death around 1910, which kind of makes his lab coat inaccurate for his era, as Howie coats didn't become a thing until 1978, and the man who coined the coat was born in 1907, so Baxter would have had no knowledge of this coat's design, since the guy who coined it would have been 3 years old when Baxter died. I mean, sure, he could have gotten one over the years as more scientists died and ended up in hell, but since a lot of the characters stick closely to their original era's fashion styles, it is a little bit weird to see him in a coat that he technically would not have worn. Plus, it just makes it harder to tell what era Baxter died in, at least for me, since fashion history is my niche. Also, it just now hit me that Baxter is clearly just a fish version of Dr. Drac. Also, speaking of fish, Baxter is a male anglerfish, yet he has a lure tip, which is mainly a female trait, as the males are more parasitic looking. Plus, at one point, Baxter was supposed to have an underbite similar to that of a female anglerfish, and while it hasn't been confirmed, I'm gonna go with the headcanon that Baxter is trans, which won't have much to do with the design as a whole, but I figured I would solidify why I chose to keep female anatomy identifications for this specific fish. Anyway, color-wise, I love Baxter's colors. I'm a sucker for blue anything, but he is taken down a few pegs due to having 7 colors, but just like the Speaker of God, they kind of blend so much you don't even notice the amount, and the fact that a lot of the different colors are mainly in one spot, aka his face, so it's not inherently too bad, but it is like, you didn't have to do that many colors. One more thing before we move on to the redesigns. Low-key, I really hate how his glasses never sit on his ear fins. It just drives me bonkers. Okay, I went a tad overboard with Baxter, mainly in the body department, but in my defense, he is an aquatic type character, and I tend to go extra with those. Plus, I am very tired of the fish characters who aren't involved with the main cast being borderline human looking, and that goes extremely hard towards Baxter, since the fish he is based on is an anglerfish. This deep sea monster queen. Look at her. She's slightly blind, a little flaky to match her environment, got an underbite that would make every Shih Tzu in the world jealous. She's hideously beautiful. Yet time and time again, we get anglerfish designs that are just people with a lure on them. So yeah, for Baxter's redesign, I made his head slightly more fused to his neck, gave him a short upper lip and an underbite, and a much larger jaw that could crack skulls, and longer bottom teeth to go with the underbite. I also moved his lure to the front of his face instead of just existing wherever it does, which hands down, I don't get why it's not in the front of his hair. His hair is already slicked back. Anyway. I also reworked his fins because technically anglerfish have more rounded fins, and due to being deep sea fish, their fins have a more see-through look to them, which is why you're able to see their spines in their fins. So Baxter's fins aren't super accurate, but with how spiky he is, it makes some sense to why the ear fins are designed that way. But y'all know me, I decided to go with a more accurate fin shape, and I did. And instead of using blue outlines for his ears. I just made 2 line marks to hint to the spines. I also gave Baxter a tail as well, because why not, right? Plus, I feel like he needs more fish parts showing since he's completely covered. Oh, I did also move his eyes further apart to give that fish vibe, you know, instead of looking straight ahead like a person, and recolored them to look more similar to a deep sea fish's eyes. There's not much light down there, so their eyes often have this ghostly whiteness to them, which I weirdly think pairs well with his role as a scientist, since white coats are a symbol of laboratory science, which seems to be Baxter's form of study, since he's very into bioscience, which now leads me to his outfit. Now, like I said previously, Baxter's Howie coat is a bit inaccurate for his time period, as he died before it was even made, and while the line work for his coat constantly moves, coats buttoned up all the way to the neck weren't really a thing yet, as well as most coronary coats were just simple cotton or wool suit jackets. So like the little lapels and everything, along with the color as well. Like, don't get me wrong, I get that his coat is dark because he's evil, but black coats went out of favor around 1890. Except for coronaries, their coats didn't change mainly due to respect reasons. But since Baxter died in 1910 and was more a lab scientist than a medical one, he still technically would have switched to a white coat. So for his outfit, I decided not to give him the traditional full lab coat with like the lapel and all of that, but more a surgical gown, since Baxter is seen bioengineering living things, so it stands to reason he's also pretty surgical. Plus, it also helps with keeping his tail, since a lot of these surgical gowns button from the back. I also gave him an apron, as that was more used by chemical type scientists, though instead of cotton, I went with a lead apron style. They're apparently supposed to help protect from radiation, and while in hell, I'm sure they have their own version of radiation, I wouldn't put it past Baxter to be the type to try out using hellish radiation, so that is why he has the apron. It also has a little pocket for his test vials he uses on unsuspecting sinners. Fun. I did keep his original rubber gloves. They're 1 on brand for mad scientists and 2 time period accurate. So I also gave him a dotted belt to keep his apron in place, and while it's not exactly an accessory, I did give him a breathing apparatus similar to Abe Sapiens, but with a water ball pump in the back for his gills, as I find it really unlikely all water-based sinners can just breathe regular air. Like, what's the point of being in a body that's made from things you hate about yourself, including the way you died? Like Baxter drowned. Him being in an environment where there's little to no water and having to breathe air should feel like he's drowning. Like, that should be the consequences of I swear I've come to really dislike the rules on how a sinner works, because the characters don't really seem to actually hate the way that they look or anything about themselves, to the sense that it's painful. Anyway, the last of his accessories are his goggles, and while I like the overall shape and coloring of the original, again, they're not exactly accurate to his time period. And while yes, he did work for Vox, where not many sinners stick to their era of fashion, Baxter's whole thing kind of hints that he does, which, by the way, Vox is either really dumb for making the guy from 1910, who's more biochemist based, make his whole internet servers, or I guess in some weird way smart if Baxter in his free time learned coding for his experiments, which if he did, then ha! Dude, you are an inventor like Sir Benches, as coding is a form of engineering. I'm making jokes, but see what happens when you research stuff? Don't get me wrong, I get a character isn't one note, but the way Baxter spoke about there being a difference between scientist and inventor, it just comes off weird and out of nowhere to have a character say they made the whole server system for their boss when they've shown no signs or interest in that field. That is more their old partner's realm of study. Granted, Sir P was hella stuck on the steampunk aesthetic, though I bet if he had been signed to Vox Tech, he'd 100% be a tech engineer now. Anyway, back on topic. So since Baxter seems to stick to his era of fashion, I decided to give him, this is how it's spelled, okay? The first pair of safety glasses, even though Baxter probably only got to enjoy them for a year before he died, but I like to think they were his last expensive purchase before going to America, or wherever the boat he was on was taking him. Anyway though, color. So while I like Baxter's Baxter's original colors, I do kind of think they're not spread out enough and don't blend all that well together. And again, it's probably because they're not spread out. But blue is also a pretty hard color palette to work with, as there's so many options and you never know what looks best with what blue. So I decided to lighten his dark blue hair. That way the blue is more noticeable and less purple looking. I also used the blue from his outer eyes as the bioluminescent patterns and water, because weirdly enough, he has two sets of neon blue colors. And used the yellow from his glasses as my highlight color for his buttons, glasses, and belt, and a few little things. And while he doesn't actually wear white or have light blue on him, the markings in his hair tend to look light blue due to the lighting, so I used that color for his lab coat. And the only reason I used that color was mainly for time period accuracy, but also so he could stand out more in the background since he's just as small as Nifty, and half the time I didn't even see him in some scenes. Anyway though, I am so in love with this design. He looks so cool. Ugh. Anyway though, character-wise, I'd probably have him be the actual spy and have him and Nifty fight about it and admitting she thought they were friends, you know, the whole I'm evil, I don't do friends thing. And the way I would have done it to where he avoids being caught is by using Angel to do it, by using his own version of Val's hypnotic gas, and is actually the one who sent Angel to bash the hotel, trapping Angel in V Tower. So that way no one would be happy with him, but would give him the chance to make up for it by helping them stop Vox. Also, just thought of something. Is Baxter not in contract with Vox? Like, how was he able to go against him? He makes it sound like he's just a regular office worker. Like, doesn't make sense. Anyway, that is all I've got for today. Next video will be next Wednesday. Not sure what it'll be based on time and what I'm able to get done, so yay. Oh, also, I know it's a long shot, but if we could make it to 100K for my birthday this March 13th, that would be an insane birthday gift. Anyway, we have one new member to scream at today. Beef jerky yummy. Welcome to the madness. And also, thank you to Forfeit10 for the super thanks on my Speaker of God redesign and the Mighty 9 review. Y'all should check those out, by the way. I hear they're really good. Also, again, I forgot the board of teeth at my place. So thank you to the other members. You have my whole heart. Everyone else, please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Follow me on my socials right here. And if possible, hit that join button or super to join the board of teeth. It really helps out the channel and me. I hope you all have a super fantastic day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!